executions, two stories. October's death row cases reveal dark secrets. Let's dive into what sealed their fate, their haunting last words, and the meals they chose for their last moments. Garcia White, Texas, October 1st. The 1989 triple murder of a lady and her two teenage daughters in Houston, Texas, led to his conviction and death sentence. He is also the main suspect in two other killings for which he was never prosecuted. One of 7 siblings, White was born in Houston, Texas on February 4, 1963. Known for his passion for football, he attended Wheatley High School before continuing his education at Lubbock Christian University. White's career was cut short by a knee injury, forcing him to leave school and take on low-paying occupations as a sandblaster, house painter, and fry cook. His girlfriend was also pregnant, and this contributed to his decision to leave school and work to support his baby. In time, White had another 2 children, but a new injury cost him his job. That's when he became addicted to drugs, which made him more aggressive. White got into a fight with Greta Williams, a 27-year-old sex worker, at a crack house in Houston in the fall of 1989. White was not involved in this crime at the time, but Williams was beaten to death in the ensuing altercation. Following this, he started going to another crack home, a northeast Houston apartment owned by 38-year-old Bonita Edwards, a widow without a job who had twin daughters, Annette and Burnett, who were 16 years old. To the dismay of Edwards' daughters, who had tried to move in with their grandmother out of fear, the flat was regularly used as a safe haven for drug addicts. White went to the flat on November 30 with the intention of using drugs and having sex with Bonita, but he got upset when she declined. Then he took out a knife and repeatedly attacked her, frightening her 2 daughters. After that, he went to the bedroom and essayed Annette before slitting her throat and stabbing her in the chest. He then went to the bathroom and did the same to Burnett. White killed the girls, then hurriedly fled after shoving a towel into Burnett's mouth and partially covering Annette's body with a blanket. The bodies were not found until December 2nd, when King Solomon, Edwards' worried boyfriend, visited the flat to see how they were doing. He asked the neighbors if they had seen Edwards or her girls when no one answered the door, and when they said they hadn't, he asked the maintenance worker to unlock it. Solomon quickly called the police after discovering Bonita and Burnett's bodies on the floor when he opened the door. Neighbor interviews provided little helpful information, but an examination of the crime site showed that there had been no forced entrance, suggesting that the victims probably knew the killer. The triple murder remained a cold case for nearly 6 years after the investigation failed to produce any credible suspects. White and a friend named Tecumseh Manuel tried to rob a convenience store in Houston in July 1995, killing the cashier, Havan Pham. After both men were taken into custody for the murder, Manuel told detectives that White had allegedly admitted to him that he had killed the Edwards family in 1989. Consequently, he was questioned about the triple murder, and although White first denied any involvement, he took responsibility after seeing some of Manuel's interrogation. He claimed that when he and his friend Terrence Moore went to Bonita's apartment with the intention of having relations and using substances, she criticized both of them for not sharing the substances with her. After Moore stabbed Bonita, her daughters left their rooms to see how she was doing. After allegedly grabbing one of them each, White admitted to essaying one victim, while Moore proceeded to methodically stab both victims. When they were done, the two departed. When confronted with the fact that Moore actually died 4 months before the killings, despite his denials, White acknowledged that he had made up the tale and he was the only one to blame. His culpability was confirmed by later DNA and serology testing that found his blood and genetic material samples at the crime scene. A grand jury indicted White on May 28, 1996 for the killings of Annette and Burnett. He was convicted and given the death penalty 2 months later. His attempts to appeal his sentence were unsuccessful on multiple occasions. Due to its problematic history and the fact that a private company was unable to replicate the results, the Houston Police Department's crime lab's DNA tests were questioned in 2004. This occurred while the crime lab's record was being investigated for its high rate of errors and lack of supporting evidence. No solid reason was found to support the commuting of White's sentence when the investigation was concluded. The 180th District Court of Harris County scheduled the execution for January 28, 2015. His lawyers responded by contesting the request in an appeal, arguing that their client's low IQ, early trauma, and spotless criminal record should be sufficient grounds for having his sentence changed to life in prison. Furthermore, they contested the validity of the DNA test and his videotaped confession, claiming that samples taken from the blanket showed the presence of another man at the crime scene. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals postponed White's case on January 27, the day before he was to be executed, in order to consider fresh arguments from White's lawyers. After the state won this appeal, Judge Deshaun Jones set a new execution date for October 1, 2024, on the request of Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg's office. Prior to his execution on October 1, 2024, he was incarcerated at the Allen B. Polunsky Unit at West Livingston on death row. Garcia Glenn White, 61 years old, was executed by the state of Texas on October 1st at the Huntsville prison facility. His final words were, "I apologize, and I pray that you can find peace, comfort, and closure in your heart for the wrong I have done and the pain I have caused you, and anybody else I have caused pain to. I'm sorry for all the pain I have caused." He then started singing a hymn called "I Trust in God" in a loud, powerful voice. He sang many lines that ended with the refrain, "I trust in God, my Savior of the world, the one who never failed." He concluded by thanking prison officials and guards for treating prisoners like human beings and urging family and friends to just keep pushing forward, keep loving one another. He breathed quietly a few times as the medications started to take effect, and then he started making noises that sounded like snores, some of which were loud. He gulped, burped, and snored softly once. After 17 minutes, he was declared deceased. As for his last meal, he didn't get to choose one because Texas doesn't offer special requests anymore. If you find the video interesting, please hit that subscribe button. The second execution, carried out in October, involved a man that clearly stated he was guilty and he wanted to be executed. Derek Ryan Deerman, Alabama, October 17. 5 people, including a 5-month pregnant woman, were killed in a mass murder that took place in Citronelle, Alabama on August 20, 2016. All of them were murdered early in the morning in a private home west of the city in a rural region. Lanita Lester's brother owned it, and she had taken refuge there. Her ex-boyfriend Derek Deerman kidnapped her and her brother's baby and brought them to Leakesville, Mississippi. That same day, he let her go. Lester brought the baby back to Citronelle. She reported the killings to the police. This mass murder was the deadliest in Mobile County's history, according to investigators. After the crime, the house burned down a few weeks later. They already considered Deerman as a suspect when he turned himself in to the police station in Greene County, Mississippi, and was taken into custody. Around 4 a.m. on August 20, 2016, a male attacker broke into a house in the 1700 block of Jim Platt Road, which is located in a rural area west of Citronelle. He murdered 5 people while they slept, including 2 married couples and a 5-month pregnant lady. He used a range of weaponry, such as rifles and an axe. He abducted his ex-girlfriend, Lanita Lester, and her brothers and his wife's newborn. He brought them to his father's home in Leakesville, Mississippi, which is roughly 30 miles to the west. Later, he let them go. After Lester brought the baby back to Citronelle, Lanita proceeded to the police station and informed the authorities about the murders. She said that her ex-boyfriend Derek Deerman had slain everyone at the house and kidnapped her. The 5 bodies were discovered at the crime scene by the police. They stated that processing the crime scene would require a lot of time. At first, it was thought that Lester had run away from Deerman, but he allegedly let her and the baby go. According to investigators, homeowners indicated that Derek Deerman was on the property when they called 911 from the residence at around 1 a.m., a few hours prior to the killings. After responding to the residence, officers left after finding no sign of him on the forested property. In the beginning, investigators thought the killings were part of an attempted kidnapping or burglary, and that the assailant had utilized an axe and many guns that were in the residence. 2 guns and a bladed weapon was discovered by the police at the house. It was said to be the deadliest mass murder in Mobile County's history. The house where the killings occurred was shared by the deceased victims, Joseph Adam Turner, Lester's married brother, who owned it and resided there with his spouse. According to reports, Lester went there to escape her Mississippi-based ex-boyfriend Derek Deerman. Among the victims of the murder were Lester's brother Joseph and his spouse, another married couple where the woman was 5 months pregnant, and they were at the house at the moment. The victims were the following: Joseph Adam Turner, 26, Lester's brother; Shannon Melissa Randall, 35, Turner's wife; Robert Lee Brown, 26; Justin Caleb Reed, 23; Chelsea Marie Reed, 22, Justin's wife, and she was the one 5 months pregnant. Born in September 1988, Derek Ryan Deerman surrendered to law enforcement in his hometown of Leakesville, Mississippi, which is roughly 48 kilometers west of Citronelle. According to reports, his father persuaded him to give up. Lanita Lester had an estranged relationship with Deerman. She had gone to her brother's house in Citronelle to seek refuge with him after leaving Deerman because of what she claimed to be an abusive relationship. Deerman's ex-wife characterized him as irritable, particularly when he didn't get his way. His marriage produced 2 children. He had accrued a long criminal record in Mississippi. Deerman was extradited to Mobile, Alabama on August 22 in order to stand trial. He allegedly said, "Don't do drugs." He apologized and claimed to have turned himself in after realizing what he had done while being led to an administrative facility. Later, he called the victims friends and apologized directly to Lester. The next day, he claimed to have been under the influence of methamphetamine when the murders occurred and attributed them to the drug's effects. Deerman was charged on August 31, 2016, with 2 counts of kidnapping and 6 counts of capital murder, one of which was for the unborn of Chelsea Reed, in accordance with Alabama's fetal homicide law. He entered a not guilty plea to each and every count. First, because it was connected to an attempted burglary, and second, because 2 or more people were killed in the same crime, it was categorized as a capital murder case. A few weeks following the killings, the Turner residence was destroyed by fire. 2 defense lawyers designated by the court were assigned to Deerman. At the state's request, Circuit Judge Rick Stout ordered Deerman to undergo a mental evaluation in mid-August 2017, which the state of Alabama was to complete. 3 subjects were to be covered: Deerman's IQ, his mental state at the time of the crimes, and his ability to stand trial. During this period, one of his lawyers left the case. Deerman refused to have his competency and IQ evaluated since he had not entered the plea pertaining to either. The court rejected his plea to set restrictions on this kind of testing. After reviewing the test results, the judge was supposed to share them with the defense and prosecutor. Deerman eventually entered a guilty plea to the charges of kidnapping and capital murder in September 2018. Due to the capital murder allegations, he was still eligible for a jury trial in Alabama, where he faced a death sentence. Prior to submitting his plea, he had dismissed both of his court-appointed lawyers, and he was found competent to stand trial by the judge. The jury approved the death sentence after Deerman was found guilty on 6 counts of capital murder and first-degree kidnapping during the trial. On October 12, 2018, the court upheld this, and Deerman received the death sentence for these killings. According to reports, in April 2024, Deerman had given up on attempting to get his sentence overturned. His death warrant was approved by the Alabama Supreme Court on September 3, 2024, and his execution date was set for October 17, 2024. In a news release, the Alabama Department of Corrections detailed Deerman's actions up to his planned execution. On Wednesday, October 16, Deerman's day included several activities, as detailed in the release. He received visits from his father, his sister, and his spiritual advisor, the Reverend Jeff Hood. For breakfast, he accepted the meal along with an extra tray that included grits, 2 biscuits, apple jelly, eggs, brown gravy, and raspberry tea. Later in the day, he had a snack consisting of a cheeseburger and a Dr. Pepper. He chose to refuse his lunch meal, but accepted a dinner of chicken, cabbage, cornbread, and peas. Throughout the day, he made phone calls to his sister, a friend, his spiritual advisor, and his father. On Thursday, October 17, the day of his execution, Deerman was visited by a friend, his father, two of his sons, his brother-in-law, and his sister. Unlike the previous day, he did not make any phone calls. Observers noted that he consumed a Dr. Pepper, a sub sandwich, and a strawberry sunkist. For breakfast, he ate oatmeal, eggs, 3 biscuits, orange juice, and brown gravy. His lunch consisted of macaroni salad, cornbread, corn, potatoes, green beans, carrots, and sloppy joe. His final meal was a seafood platter brought in from a local restaurant. At the time of his execution, corrections officers secured Deerman to a gurney and inserted needles into veins in both of his arms. At 6:01 p.m., an officer called out Deerman's name as part of a consciousness check, during which his arms were seen moving slightly. However, Corrections Commissioner John Hamm informed reporters that this movement did not indicate consciousness. Around 3 minutes later, Deerman seemed to stop breathing, and officials closed the curtains between the execution chamber and the viewing area at 6:08 p.m. The state officially pronounced his death at 6:14 p.m. When the curtains closed, his family sobbed. Deerman's last words were, "To the victim's family, forgive me. This is not for me, this is for you. I've taken so much. To my family, y'all already know I love you." A third execution planned was of a man accused of the most heinous crime, at least in my books, the murder of his own daughter. This, however, ended up being stayed just minutes after it actually happened. Robert Leslie Robertson III, Texas, October 17. Roberson was found guilty of capital murder and given the death penalty in 2003 after being charged with seriously abusing his 2-year-old daughter and killing her. Robertson was born on November 10, 1966 in Wood County, Texas. He was freed from prison in 2000 after being found guilty of burglary, larceny, and parole violations between 1991 and 1999, according to official documents. Robertson had 2 children from a failed marriage before 2002, and he also had a daughter with a different lady who was allegedly a sex worker and a chronic drug user. Nikki Michelle Curtis was born on October 20, 1999, and was placed in the custody of her maternal grandparents. Robertson was given custody of Nikki after he underwent DNA testing and was found to be her biological father. Shortly after her birth, the baby was reported to have a number of chronic illnesses. 2 years after the conclusion of his most recent incarceration, Robertson took an injured Nikki to the hospital on January 31, 2002. He informed hospital officials that his daughter had fallen from her bed, had head injuries, and was unconscious when he woke up. 2-year-old Nikki Curtis was declared dead after hospital officials were unable to resuscitate her despite the medical intervention. However, the physicians and nurses thought that the injuries were not the result of a fall and speculated that child abuse may have been the cause. Thus, a police report was filed. Robertson was taken into custody the following day, and he was accused of murder, a crime that, according to Texas state law, carries a life sentence or the death penalty. A jury in Anderson County found Robertson guilty of capital murder on February 21, 2003, and he was given the death penalty. Robertson's execution was set for October 17, 2024, after the trial court in Anderson County, Texas, approved a death warrant for him on July 1, 2024. According to reports, Robertson was the first death row inmate convicted of shaken baby syndrome to have his execution planned within the United States. His case faced intense discussion with regards to whether his murder conviction and death sentence should stand in light of the outdated science of shaken baby syndrome when the execution date was announced. The announcement of Robertson's execution date further heightened the lingering concerns about his alleged innocence. In an effort to prevent Robertson's execution, lawmakers and law enforcement officials overwhelmingly supported the commutation of his death sentence. Reverend Brian Wharton, a former police officer who looked into the Robertson's case and whose testimony helped get Robertson on death row, stated that he believed that the conviction or sentence should not have occurred if proper investigations had been conducted in the case, particularly since Robertson's autism was not diagnosed. Robertson's appeal against the death sentence was given a second hearing on October 8, 2024. However, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denied his case on October 11, 2024. On October 16, 2024, the Texas Parole Board voted unanimously 6-0 to not recommend Robertson's sentence be commuted or his execution delayed. The scheduled execution of Robertson was halted after the Texas Supreme Court issued a partial stay late Thursday night. The stay was issued just over an hour before his death warrant was due to expire, following a tense legal battle between the state and Robertson's defenders over his fate. The Supreme Court's decision came swiftly, following a split decision by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals earlier that night, which had overturned the lower court's order to stop the execution. While the court order allowed his death warrant to lapse at midnight on Thursday, the legal dispute is ongoing. A new execution date could be scheduled either after his potential testimony before lawmakers next week or sooner if the court orders it. The delay in Robertson's execution began on Wednesday when the Texas Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence voted to subpoena him as they reconsider the validity of his conviction. At this moment, there are 3 people scheduled to be executed in the month of November and another 4 for the month of December. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.